welcome to Wrestling Roundup on FreeFM, ArrowFM, and MPR. As always, I'm Grady, and live on Skype, we've got Josh.
Hey.
I think we should just crack straight on into it with the, I guess, biggest news point, the biggest story this week, and that is we now have a singular, undisputed, unified tag team champions.
As if you didn't need more proof that the brand split is dying. Yeah, we have one set of tag team champions. We have one set of world champions. So that leaves the question of, are they going to unify the women's titles?
Yeah, we haven't seen any. We saw the toss around and then the belt switch, and you know, there was that period where we thought, you know, there was a really good chance they were about to unify them, but in terms of lately, there hasn't been a whole lot.
Yeah. But then the question is that if you do it, who do you put on top in that match? Ronda Rousey, who by name recognition would be the bigger star, or the person you built into being a bigger star within the company ring, Bianca Belair.
Yeah, I guess the difference, kind of, like taking brands out of this, is that even with the world titles together as one big championship, you still do have 3 championships that the men can go after in their singles pursuits, right? You do have the undisputed title, you got the Intercontinental, and you got the US. If we were to merge the 2 women's titles, even if it does lead to having a secondary belt later on, that is, you know, one target for the entire division across it all, ignoring the tag team titles.
Yeah, it'd be one target. Or it would force them to actually do something with the tag team belt.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Well, there's apparently supposed to be a tournament to crown a new champion.
Cool. I'll see that when I see that.
Yeah. I'm actually believing that this whole thing's going to work, and that once they crown a new champion, that's when we'll see the original champions with the original belts, and it'll just set up a unification match for proper champions.
Look, we're going to have to wait and see what happens going forward. At this point, there's not a huge amount that can surprise me. If the whole point is to get me interested in the belts, it's not exactly doing that. I still think, you know, we've said since day one that the NXT women's tag team and the WWE women's tag team belts should just be the same thing. Neither are doing particularly much at the moment. Personally, if you ask me to, I guess, redesign from the ground up, at the moment, I would stick with the men's titles as they are, you know, a shared tag title, a world title, and then a couple of extras floating around. I would merge those 2 women's tag titles. I'd switch the women's titles so that we have one big world title that everybody aims for, and a secondary. As much as people might say that's copying what AEW did, it's just putting a secondary title in a division that could do with one of those, where you don't need to be a Ronda Rousey or a Bianca Belair to hold the championship. And at the moment, they're kind of using the women's tag titles like that, but they're just bouncing them around with no real care in the world about them.
I have a proposal for the tournament that might make it a little more interesting. Whatever they decide for the number of teams, make the last team the NXT Women's Champion. That way you have the option to unify those belts with the actual titles, and have one set of titles come out at the end.
If it merges those 2 titles, I'm down. At this point, whatever it takes to have those be, you know, shuffled around. Like, NXT is nutty with the amount of belts that it's got going. You know, we got women's tag belts, we got the women's heavyweight belt, we got the men's heavyweight belt, we got the North American belt, we got the NXT tag team. There's so much gold floating around in NXT for what is practically like an hour a week. And
at least we don't have the Cruiserweight Championship.
That's true. We do have one less belt. And I do feel like some belt consolidating needs to come down. It's almost like I don't want to diss the bookers because I could never do their job, but like every story has to be about the belt kind of thing because there was so many and there was so many opportunities to do that. And we're sort of lacking. We get a couple of them here and there of these really good stories or series of matches, if we're talking about like Rollins and Rhodes, where the belts aren't involved. And I guess without the basic storyline of, I want the belt and you have the belt, it kind of forces the story to be a little bit different and a little more interesting to me. Especially when we are talking about like the women's tag belts or these tag team belts, even for the men, have really struggled to have deep and interesting storylines about them. And so removing a few of those chess pieces off the board and forcing the stories to be stories can only do good things. That's my rant of the week. As I look over at my audio waveform and see like a 2-minute block of me talking. But, you know, taking these belts off of RK Bro, putting them both on the Usos, it does open up both Randy Orton and Riddle, not necessarily to split, but to go off and do some singles endeavors. And it seems as though Riddle's aiming at Roman pretty quickly.
Yeah, rumor definitely was that the next 3 opponents for Reigns would be Riddle, Orton, McIntyre.
It's 3 great opponents.
With Riddle being the main Money in the Bank opponent, which would then take him out of the match that I've been calling he would win for 6 months. Which probably means it'll be Cody Rhodes that'll end up winning it. Followed by Orton at SummerSlam, which makes total sense. And then, of course, that UK pay-per-view at against McIntyre also makes perfect sense. So 3 perfect opponents that you can build stories through using Roman. And it does give Riddle some exposure to the main event.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, maybe the Drew one at the end, but I don't see Orton or Riddle picking up the belt between here and there. And as you say, that should be 3 absolute bangers of a match that make perfect sense. With SummerSlam being Orton, and with Clash at the Castle being Drew McIntyre. It's really good, and lots of time to build between the pieces. But Roman Reigns has shown to be unstoppable. Like, if you look at the list of people he's already taken out, and now you're going to lay Randy Orton, Riddle, and possibly Drew McIntyre down in front as well. There's not a lot of people who could take him out at that point if he takes out all 3 of those opponents laying in front of him.
Yeah. But it's also very possible, unlikely, but possible, that the end of the Drew match, one way or the other, leaves the champion vulnerable to a cash-in.
Yeah.
Because that's definitely going to be a match I want to keep an eye on, because that is 2 big, meaty men that will be slapping meat for 20 minutes. And it could definitely leave the champion in a weakened state.
That's true. I feel like the biggest advantage that Roman Reigns has with a cash-in at the moment is that he does have the Usos and he does have Paul Heyman, which is, you know, if you want to cash in, you're going to have to go through them, assuming Drew McIntyre hasn't kicked their heads off already.
Yeah, it's definitely, and it's still 2-3 months to build to get there too. So, it's entirely possible that they may lose their spots in the Isle of Relevancy by then, which is what they were threatened with if they didn't win the titles on SmackDown.
That is true. They did manage to remain there, though.
Yeah. So it's definitely a case of, like, I want to see what happens, but I want to see the match between Riddle and Reigns, because I want to see if it could show if Riddle is really ready for the main big time. Because if he puts on a great match with Roman, I'm calling it here. He'll be the Royal Rumble winner next year.
This time you can't call Money in the Bank winner now, so you're gonna call Royal Rumble winner instead.
But only if the match really clicks. If it doesn't click or it doesn't feel like Riddle's belongs, I'll go cold on it. I've been known the turn before and go with what my gut says.
Yeah. So here comes my question then, right? Because Hell in a Cell, we'll be doing our proper preview for Hell in a Cell next week. It's June 5th, June 6th if you're in New Zealand. Where does the Usos and Roman Reigns fit into that? You know, we're talking about that one-on-one between Roman and Riddle happening at Money in the Bank, so we're not getting that at Hell in a Cell. What are we getting at Hell in a Cell instead? Because at this point, we could get 6-man tag again. We could just get a rematch between the tag teams, but they're playing Orton off as injured.
Yeah, I just want to say they'll probably just throw Nakamura to the wolves. And just have him face Roman. And then, and I don't know what the Usos will be doing. I really have no idea. It's also possible that they may not need to be working because they may need more time for some of the other matches that will be in the cell. Like,
it's true.
The ones we already know about with Cody and Seth. We figure AJ and Edge will probably end up in it. So those are two matches that could go 30 minutes at each. So would you really need the world champion at that point? Or the world tag team champions?
We'll have to wait and see, because obviously you bring up an interesting point with Shinsuke. At the moment, he's still trying to get to the Bloodline, but he's got, Sami Zayn in front of him, which seems to be a pretty common piece at the moment for anyone trying to get to the Bloodline. Zayn throwing himself on the metaphorical sword for them. But they haven't forgotten that Nakamura did, front up to Reigns. And so I do think Reigns and Nakamura could put on a decent little match. And Hell in a Cell is probably the right place to put it as well, as you say, because there is so many other great matches that are going to be on the card. If they don't gel or if they don't perfectly nail their match, we don't need a 5-star classic out of them. Whereas we might be leaning more towards requiring those at SummerSlam and places like that. So yeah, I could definitely see a Reigns versus Nakamura kind of match just sort of thrown on.
Yeah, it would definitely not be a very long match. I would figure probably anywhere from 8 to 12 minutes.
Yeah, I was going to say about 10.
Right. And it would just be basically just Roman just steamrolling him. He'll get a few moments in with a few offense, but it will just be a bloodbath, basically, without the blood.
Yeah. Alrighty, well, that ends our Bloodline discussion of the week. It probably doesn't. But we're going to go into our entrance theme this week because we are roughly halfway through the show. And that is the song for... And you're back at Wrestling Roundup on FreeFM, ArrowFM, and MPR. I'm Grady, he's Josh. Let's jump a little bit over to the non-red or blue brand. Let's look at NXT. We've been catching along this women's breakout tournament, and some interesting developments this week. With your favorite and your pick, actually Nikita Lyons, being removed from said tournament.
Yeah. Apparently due to injury. You can't see it, but I did quotation marks because I still believe it's an actual injury. That said, they replaced her with apparently somebody who's already established as an established heel, and people can see actually winning the whole thing. Being Tiffany Stratton.
Yeah, well, she's got a very quick path to the finals, and I'm not saying Fallon Henley, her semi-final match opponent, was easy, but you do jump in, you miss the opening rounds, you just win one match, and all of a sudden you're in the grand finals. It's a pretty easy way to get there. And I'm with you. I do think Tiffany Stratton is somebody who could make a big wave, but I think her role in this tournament is really just going to be to be that heel on the other side. Against our other finalist, which is Roxanne Perez, who was able to knock off Lash Legend, and to really give Roxanne Perez that sort of underdog face kind of vibe, where she's the smaller opponent against the bigger and scarier Tiffany Stratton, overcome the odds kind of storyline.
Yeah, and I think she will. I think Roxanne Perez will win.
And it also lets us not have Nikita Lyons. A part of me says just don't put her in the tournament ever, but this does let her exit the tournament without taking a big loss to any of these other people. Like if the final was Lyons versus Roxanne, then it's a little iffy-wiffy, but I do think this is going to work out better for Roxanne's story, and as well as protecting Lyons a little bit.
Yeah, it almost had to be that if she was still in the tournament, she would have had to have been eliminated by like a distraction or something that would have cost her the match, because it wouldn't have made sense otherwise.
Yeah. And Stratton's definitely the best opponent to put in as that, heel, words I can't say on radio kind of character. I think it's going to be a great match, and I look forward to seeing Roxanne walk out on top, hopefully. I know Roxanne can go, so I'm quite excited to see her go against someone like Tiffany. There's been a lot of chaos on NXT recently, to be fair. Like, if you're just skimming the results and you just see, like, attacked after match, distracted during match, a brawl breaks out, you're probably seeing those words about 6 times throughout the episode. A lot of the divisions seem to be wide open. That being, like, the women's titles division and the men's title division. There's still so many competitors that want their shot. And I guess let's start with the women's first off. Mandy Rose had a match against Indy Hartwell. Unfortunately, Indy wasn't able to pick up the win. But, we had her Toxic Attraction teammates get taken out by Kaden and Katana. We had the match. Then, people spilled back out into the ring. Then at the end, Wendy Chu comes out. A lot of wildness in this division.
Yeah, I do think Wendy Chu is the next opponent for Rose, probably at the In Your House event.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was nice to see Indy Hartwell get a shot at the title, even if it wasn't a full-on shot. It was still nice to see somebody different. But I do think Wendy Chu is probably the next opponent for Mandy Rose. And we'll have to see where they go from there. But I definitely have enjoyed the character so far of Wendy Chu. Well, but we'll have to see if we can deal with it being bigger matches.
Yeah. Because there's absolutely nothing against Wendy. Wendy's an amazing wrestler. If you look at any of her stuff prior to NXT and what she's been able to pull off with this character. And I know great gimmick wrestlers have been, top of their division champions before, but it's real hard to imagine the character Wendy Chu carrying around, the NXT Women's Championship. I will be pleasantly surprised if she does end up winning this feud. And I would love to laugh at it week in and week out. It's just something that's a little bit harder to see.
Yeah, but you know something, the character that you could have seen it with? The one she had before, the character in that faction.
Yeah.
I think it was Mei Ling.
I believe so, yeah. The faction was Tian Sha, if I recall.
Tian Sha, but I think her name was Mei Ling, but I'm not sure. But yeah, that you could have definitely seen that character with the belt.
100%.
But yeah, that's why I've enjoyed the work so well, just because it's just such a stark difference from that original character.
Yeah, I do think this is going to move into Wendy Chu versus Mandy Rose, and pretty obviously Katana and Kaden versus Toxic Attraction as well. So should be some wild scenes at In Your House. Quite a few good title matches set up and ready to go. Because it appears as though in the men's division, although Duke Hudson got his shot and technically won the match, it looks like it's going to be Braun Breaker versus Gacy again. Yeah,
but they're just messing with the champion now. I think they're trying to show that the champion isn't, like, invulnerable. but doing stuff that's like a rookie would make a mistake with using a still character that's been thrown to him in a match. And then the whole stuff about there being like a picture from his childhood where he scored a touchdown but his father wasn't there. Stuff like that. It's just been building and stuff that I think they're giving more edge to Braun Breaker, bringing out more of his reality, his family stuff. And I think it's also giving you a sense that that Joe Gracie is going far enough that he could mess with Braun enough that it could cause him to slip up and lose the title.
Yeah. And we'll have to, I guess, wait and see what ends up happening here, because it is all the mind games from Gacy. That's all it is. And it's a weird character, I guess, to be getting the mind games from, if we looked a couple months ago, but now this is, Gacy's really leaning into it. He's got these hooded figures. It's really working out for him. And I do think Braun Breaker can overcome it, but it is going to be an interesting story for him to overcome here. But that seems to be the match we're going to get it in your house, would be Breaker versus Gacy for sure. Alrighty, we still got a good chunk of show left to go, probably about 5 to 6 minutes. Is there anything else that you want to focus on here? Giving a bit of time to, because there was a lot of stuff, but we can only talk about so many things. We got some changes to Hell in a Cell that we'll talk about for sure in our preview show.
We're definitely getting. Let's not just talk about the fact that we finally are getting Owens versus CD.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and in a completely non-complaining statement, this Ezekiel and Kevin Owens stuff has gone on for a while now. I've been enjoying it every second of the way. I'm sure you have been as well, but it'll be interesting to see what happens when they do actually get their one-on-one at Hell in a Cell.
Yep. Yeah, it's definitely going to be situation where it was time for them to actually face off so that we can move on, but everything that they have done has been so entertaining, especially with Chad Gable being involved. Let's face it, while Owens and Ezekiel have been the stars of this storyline, the real star was Chad Gable. Chad Gable's either his sense of humor, just the stuff that he was doing, playing off of both Owens and Ezekiel, just made it work even better.
Can we all finally sit down and agree that Chad Gable truly is Kurt Angle Jr.? Like, this guy's been able to pull off the comedy. This guy's able to pull off being one of the best wrestlers there is. And, we've had bits and pieces around, and obviously they went with Jason Jordan instead, but Chad Gable can do it all.
If he had been 2 to 3 years younger than he actually is, when they did that storyline, absolutely he would have been the chosen. The fact was his age made it impossible for WWE to go with that storyline, because it would have put Kurt Angle as a teenage father. Because he would have been 16.
You got gold here with Chad Gable in the same way that you had gold with Kurt Angle. Let's not goof it up again. Let's say again. We did have a whole chunk where he was Shorty G, so let's not mess it up again.
Yeah, I agree. I think after this, they do need to do some. They probably I hate saying this because I know we advocate for them to do something with the tag team division all the time.
And you're about to say, let's break them up.
Let's break up Gable and Otis and let them go off in their separate directions and do something with Chad Gable. Maybe have him chase after the U.S. Championship. I was going to say Intercontinental, but then I just realized, no, that's not going to be an option. Because I think we know who Ricochet's next opponent is going to be. And it's probably going to be his last opponent as champion.
Yeah. He's about to get pulverized into the canvas.
Yep. The only thing I hope is that he gets some offense in. Because I definitely see, whenever they decide to do the match, I just see him getting steamrolled by Gunther.
Look, I look forward to Gunther doing a chest chop and Ricochet flying 200 meters backwards. And just absolutely caving him in. It's going to be a sight to see for sure. Alrighty, well, that is pretty much all the time we have for this week. It's been great talking to you.
Bye, B.
You can visit our Facebook page, facebook.com/wrestling RND up, or our Twitter page, twitter.com/wrestling RND up, or our YouTube page, youtube.com/wrestling RND up. And we will see you next week with our preview of WWE Hell in a Cell.